everybody. Welcome in here to Lacrosse Now. We got a show for you. We just finished watching the Virginia-Duke game, which was a nice little Thursday afternoon tilt, if you will. So we'll have our instant reactions to that game as well. We'll also look ahead to the weekend. We have some games we're looking forward to, who has something to prove, and also women's quick picks for this weekend, too.
Plus some terrific guests from Jacksonville, as they are red hot, coming off wins over High Point and Richmond. They are now the team to beat in the SoCon. We've got their goalie, Luke Millican, one of their star attackmen, Max Waldbaum, both joining us, both transfers who have interesting stories in how they've gotten to Jacksonville and now obviously an important part in the Dolphins story, as well as Madison Doucette, the Northwestern goalie. We talk on and off the field stuff with her. Madison, just such an impressive human being as well.
She was awesome. She was really
terrific.
Good. But yeah, Virginia-Duke just finished up a few moments ago from when we are taping this. Duke all over Virginia. This one, I mean, I think a lot of people were very excited about this game for a lot of good reasons, and unfortunately didn't really live up to the hype, depending on what side of the equation you're looking forward to. Duke just dominating through and through, and I think this is the Duke team that we expected to see maybe a little earlier this season. Hopefully it's not too little too late, but Virginia just sort of laying an egg. They just beat North Carolina, 11-4 over the weekend. Duke had the loss to Notre Dame, a one-goal loss at that, coming off that there. And, I think that Brennan O'Neill is coming into his own. And I think the more Duke uses him, the better off they are, in my opinion, from what they've done the last few weeks here, even in the losses.
Right, yeah. I mean, and that's been the key, I think. It was right around that Towson game is when it felt like Brendan O'Neill turned it on and felt like, okay, I can take over this team. I can be the guy, because he's still only a sophomore. He's still figuring this out. And he had a year where he had so much talent around him last year, including a guy who some consider the best player in the college game a year ago, in Michael Sowers. So there's a feeling out process, and it feels like he has taken over that mantle. But I think the key when you look at this Duke offense in this game is that it's some other guys who have been stepping up, who are filling some other roles. Because you know Nakai Montgomery's good, and Dyson Williams is going to give you a bunch of goals. Like, you know some of the other knowns, but it's the depth of scoring that is now starting to filter in. I mean, Reed Landon, the freshman from Dallas, Texas, goes off for his second straight hat trick. Had a hat trick last week, another 3 goals here. So 6 of his 9 goals on the year have come in the last 2 games. And him, Owen Caputo with 3 points once again here today. Those are the guys. It's the 5th and 6th guys down the roster that are going to have to do it, because Duke's going to play up and down games. That is the style in which they play, so they're going to have to score. And when you're playing these types of games, you got to have other guys do it. And so I think the other guys around Brendan O'Neill stepping up, which was key here today.
On the defensive end, you saw Will Frizzoli had a nice game. 3 ground balls, 3 caused turnovers. Virginia didn't shoot well. They shot 16%. They took 49 shots, which was more than Duke took, and a lot of that also comes into saves that Adler was making. He had 20 on the day, but that's startling to me for a Virginia team that has a lot of talent on the offensive end. We know that, but they just don't seem in sync at this point in the year. Probably didn't even score as many goals as they should have against North Carolina over the weekend either. So I don't know. This didn't knock Virginia out of the tournament. It kept Duke in the conversation for the tournament. I know Paul Carcaterra at the end of the broadcast said, 3 ACC teams, I guarantee it, whatever, what have you. And that's a fine opinion to have. I'm not there yet. I think there's also a couple of non-conference games to be had down the stretch here. And if Duke loses their last couple games of the year, I mean, they've got that's Virginia's schedule. Duke has Notre Dame still and North Carolina to play. This was their first top 10 RPI victory of the year. Yeah. We'll see where some of these other teams end up. Notre Dame might find themselves in there, but Duke has to beat them. They got to beat North Carolina. So there's still work for Duke to do, and I think there's work for the ACC to do as well down this final stretch. Virginia not out yet, and they don't have. I mean, they have Quinnipiac, Syracuse, Lafayette. So really,
their work is done.
Their work has been done. They got to take care of business against Syracuse at the end of the day.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Virginia should win out. Theoretically, they should win out. If they lose against Syracuse and they only win 2 or 3 here down the stretch, then I think maybe there becomes more of a conversation. But if Virginia takes care of business the way we expect them to, I think they're fine. The Duke thing, you look at Mike Adler in goal. Yeah. With him, 20 saves. He had 19 at one point in the 3rd quarter, which is a huge number. Adler played out of his mind. But something that was being thrown out there on Twitter about some of the analytic numbers is that he's seeing it. He saw a ton of shots in this game.
Yeah.
Which he has a great game, but that's not a recipe for success long-term for Duke because you're relying on Mike Adler, and he's a terrific veteran presence. He's a great goalie. But if you're going to need him to make 20, 25 saves in a game, like that's not going to be a recipe for success for Duke to go deep in the tournament.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think I would chalk some of that up to Virginia's shot selection, too, at the end
Some
of
of
the
it,
day.
yeah.
Like, he didn't seem like he was standing on his head, really,
but
for most of the game. He made some nice saves, but it felt like he wasn't tested as much as you see some other goalies make 10, 11 saves that are all spectacular in that. I mean, sometimes those save numbers can be a little inflated depending on what this flow of the game is.
You're right.
Virginia did win more faceoffs. LaSalle did okay. I mean, it was somewhat even. Virginia did win more, had the ball more. But, yeah, I think you're right. Long term, I don't know if Duke can sustain this. I think that's what we've been wondering about Duke all year long.
The other thing for Virginia that was kind of uncharacteristic for them in this game is you saw it in the second half. They created a bunch of quote-unquote second chance opportunities in the ride. They had like one possession in the third quarter where they had two of the best takeaway checks I think I've seen all year in the ride.
Yeah.
Like completely de-twigging guys. And how many times do you see Virginia when they're down by a handful of goals, they make a couple of those plays, they cash in the other way, and all of a sudden the game switches like that? And I give a lot of credit to Duke and in terms of they got enough guys back, and then also Virginia didn't execute in some of those situations where I think we're used to normally seeing them execute in those unsettled situations, and that's what allows them to go on some of those runs.
I mean, Matt Moore was their only scorer in double figures. He had 2 goals for an offense that we think of Virginia is rather dynamic.
They weren't dynamic today.
Is it time yet? And I don't think the answer is yes to this. Is it time yet to stop giving Virginia the benefit of the doubt? You know, they got blown out against Maryland. They lose this. They get blown out against Duke. They're the back-to-back defending national champions. Because of that, I'm not writing them off or anything like that for the tournament, I don't think. But you're getting closer to that point where you're like, I don't know if this Virginia team is as good as the last couple of years.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me the pause is that how many times, and this year's ACC is different, so I think it's harder to fall back on what we've seen in years past, but like how many times did you see somebody get blown out in the ACC semifinals and really not play well in that ACC tournament, and all of a sudden they're the team playing championship weekend, and the team that ended up winning 2 games over the course of 3 days is knocked out in the first round. I do think there is something to be said for having done it back-to-back years in terms of winning national championships in May, that when we get to May, if in that first round they don't show up, then we'll know that. But until we get to that first round and we're seeing Virginia playing in May, I think it's too early to say that this isn't the team.
And they're not a regular season team. They never have been, Virginia. They're not a team. They're going to win. They're going to lose by 1 goal. And I'll say the same thing about the Boston College women in a moment here. I mean, they weren't a regular season team last year. They peaked at the right time. And if there's anything Virginia and Lars Tiffany know how to do, that's peak at the right time. I had a long conversation with him about just that. And he said this is an art form for them.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, they practice this and they know what it takes. Got to get in first. And looks like they've done enough if they can finish things out to do so. And then once the tournament starts, you have to trust the history now for Virginia the last couple times around.
Their regular seasons in both those championship years were nothing to write home about.
No,
like, they were good, and
yeah.
they put on display that they had the talent to do it. But it's not like going into the tournament. Virginia's the team.
Right.
There are probably 3 or 4 other teams that you would pick ahead of them.
Right, and I think we could say the same thing about Duke. That Duke has had some great regular season performances over the years, but the old adage, Duke in February, so no one's defying Duke either by the regular season. You have to also maybe now, at least in these last couple years, treat Virginia the same way, just in this window, this vacuum.
I think you look at the NCAA men's basketball tournament, we had all the things about the ACC being down during the regular season. They still ended up with 2 teams in the Final Four. The crazy thing to think about with how bad the ACC has been, especially considering their standards this year, whether it's 2 or 3 teams that get in the NCAA tournament, you could probably put any one of them in the Final Four, and any one of them could make a run. You could get 2 of them in, and it wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that's what you're looking at with some of these teams. They have the ability to do it. It's just, are they going to get there?
Duke, Virginia, Notre Dame, and then after that, I don't think anybody else.
Yes, I agree. Those are the three.
Do that. But
those are the three.
But it's going to be probably two of those three. So
most likely.
And I know some people say other things, but you look at what's going on in the Ivy League. A couple big games for the Ivy League this weekend too. We'll get into that in a moment. So let's get into this weekend. I think we're ready to move along.
Let's do it.
Who has the most to prove this weekend, Travis?
I'm going to go a little bit off the radar in terms of teams that are outside the top 20 right now. And I'm looking at Delaware, a team that was in the top 20 just a couple of weeks ago. They were entering the CAA regular season, were the team it seemed like to beat in the conference. They were the best team in the regular season last year in the CAA. And they walk into this weekend where they're playing Towson at home, and they're 0-2 in the conference. And they're playing a 2-0 Towson team that has really looked good the first 2 weeks here in CAA play. And if they lose, all of a sudden, you put your backs against the wall of possibly not making the tournament.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about the NCAAs. It's not even making the conference tournament in the CAA.
Your season's done.
So backs against the walls for the Blue Hens here. They've lost their 2 games here in CAA play by a combined 2 goals. The 1-goal loss against UMass where they gave up the 5-goal lead at halftime, and then they lost to Hofstra by 1 goal this past weekend. So all of a sudden, they're in trouble. And you look back at that Hofstra game, I'm like, and I didn't have a chance to watch that Hofstra game. So I was going back through some of the game recap and the notes, and you look at the stats. Delaware's game against Hofstra, they were perfect in the clear. They had fewer turnovers and only won 3 fewer faceoffs, yet they were outshot 44-32, and Hofstra had 5 more shots on goal. That Delaware offense is what's supposed to be pushing this team. We need more from it. I mean, Michael Robinson still got 3 goals. Like, it wasn't a head-scratching result. Hofstra just beat them.
Yeah, and Hofstra's a team that struggled to close teams out this year, and Delaware made a run, and Hofstra closed them out. So, I mean, what's that say about Delaware, unable to sort of overcome that? Hofstra, also a team that's dealt with a lot of injuries this year, not really at full strength, trying to figure out their life without Ryan Tierney there still, and we're in the midst of April. So they've been trying to get their act together with injuries in mind.
And that's their best win this past week.
That's a great win over Delaware. So if you're Delaware, you're like, you got to figure things out now, or it's now or never. But at this point in the CAA, everyone's got to figure something out. Yeah,
well, and I will be interested to see what Ben DeLuca does in goal, because Paul Reedy has taken over that starting job. The freshman goalie from North Carolina has played nicely, but he got pulled toward the end of the first half in a 6-6 tie. Matt Kilcarry came in. Wasn't much better. They had very similar numbers between. They essentially split halves in that Hofstra game. I'll be interested to see, does he keep going back to the freshman, or at some point here, now with backs against the wall, do they turn things over to the grad student and see if maybe Matt Kilcarry gets a shot?
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see in this Hofstra game, or not in the Towson game where they go. Because Towson, man, we talked about them before. Like, they seem to have turned it on, and they've got a better offense than they've had last year, in the last couple of years. Nick DeMeo is really exciting as the attack spot, one of the more talented offensive players in the CAA. This Tigers team is on a roll and always difficult. So this is a huge game.
Yeah, and all these games are going to be 1-goal games, it feels like, in the final stretch of the CAA. It's
going to be awesome.
It's going to be fun. All right. Most of the proof for me is going to be Boston University, because they are a team that had a rough week last week. I mean, you go on and you get blown out by Yale, and then funny results. I mean, Yale shot the lights out. BU scored 15 goals in that game. It was 22-15. And then you lose to Princeton 12-7. Princeton really shut them down on the offensive side. And yes, you're playing Ivy League talent, and we know that. And we've seen how different the Ivy League is this year compared to everybody else. But the last 2 games, Jake Cates hasn't scored. 21 goals, 8 assists. You haven't scored the last 2 games. Matt Garber had 8 straight games of double-digit saves to start the season. Single-digit saves the last 3 games played. So he's at an under 50% save percentage the last 2. Obviously, Yale shot the lights out. Not completely his fault, but at the same time, guys that have been performing for them all year long, when the lights have been the brightest in games that they would have liked to win, that maybe could have improved their stock at a possible at-large bid, depending on what shakes out. I know that's far-fetched, but still, those are opportunities for the league and for BU, because you never know what's going to happen in this conference tournament. They did not show up. So they've got a huge now conference game against the team in Loyola. Loyola hungry as ever, 5-5, battle-tested, played a tough schedule, beat Duke this year. They're 4-1 in the Patriot League. Boston University, 5-0. This is a very large game for BU when you're trying to talk about how things will flesh out in that Patriot League tournament, whether or not you get that first round bye, you get your move on to the semifinals. This is a pretty important game for them, and it's time for them to prove that they are the team that we thought they were at the beginning of the year.
Well, I'm going to take what you just said because I've got this game circled for a category we have later. So our producers might be mad at me, but I'm going to move ahead to our game to keep an eye on. I'm going to skip a topic because my game to keep your eye on this weekend is BU at Loyola, because everything you just mentioned. Here you go, BU, because at-large bid is now out of the question for the Terriers.
Yep.
It's all eyes on getting the AQ in the Patriot League, and you got to go to the top dog in the league, and you got to win in Mount Ridley. If you want to be the top team in the Patriot League tournament, you go to Loyola and you take down the team that has been the traditional power in this league. So this is like, hey, what you got? Who's the top dog? Is it the Terriers or are they the Greyhounds? Like, I think this is a huge, not only just in terms of like broad picture, it'd be good to stay undefeated in the conference because they still have some tough games left here down the stretch. But I think this is a statement for themselves internally and also to the rest of the league. Like, okay, we mean business here this year. And we're not just a nice story in February and March. We're a story that's going to continue on into May.
And you look at the other half of the spectrum in Loyola here. I mean, you're a program, a very proud program at that. After Pat Spencer leaves a couple years ago, you want to help fulfill that legacy left by some of the other players that have come through your system. And this is a big game for you and in a squad and a team that, you know, came out of the gates really slowly this year. So you're now in the midst of conference play and start to have to prove yourself as well. So I could also put Loyola in my have something to prove here because this is a very important game for them too. Yeah,
Loyola coming off they crushed Navy last week. They jumped out to a 10-1 lead in that game on the road, not a far road trip down to Annapolis, but still went on the road to Annapolis, jumped out to a 10-1 lead. They're now 5-5 overall.
Yeah.
They got Georgetown coming up on Tuesday, which is a huge game. So you got back-to-back gigantic games. Remember, that Georgetown game last year is where things flipped for Loyola because nobody had Loyola beating Georgetown last year. And it was a midweek game, and they went to Georgetown. They beat them. They made a statement, and all of a sudden things turned for the Greyhounds, and they were on their way to the NCAA tournament, nearly made the Final Four. So this is that time of the year, a very veteran group. Let's see if they turn it around. Something to keep in mind here for BU, Terry Foy reporting from Inside Lacrosse that Jay Cates is doubtful for the rest of the year with an injury. So BU, in a stretch that is a very difficult stretch for them, got to figure things out offensively without a guy who's been really important for them.
Yeah, that's probably an answer to some of his struggles the last couple games, and we'll see what it looks like moving forward for BU. All right. Most important game. I'll go first here since you went first last time. I'm going with Penn Harvard. One you might expect in the Ivy League, of course.
This is huge.
Penn is 1-3 in the Ivy League. Harvard's 2-1. And I'm looking at the wins and the losses here. Harvard, you get the 3-1. You ensure yourself that you can at least finish 3-3, and you get the tiebreaker in this game too. So whatever you do, I mean, you hand Penn a fourth loss. That almost eliminates Penn in this case because Harvard, at this time needs this victory to improve to 3-1 in the conference. And then after that, they will go and have to take on teams like Princeton and at Yale. They get the tiebreaker against Brown because Harvard beat Brown earlier in the year. So I think that this is such an important game for Harvard. And the same on the side of Penn. You just come off a loss 12-10 to Brown. Penn led 5-0 in that game. Turned the ball over 17 times. Penn the rest of the way. You got Harvard at Dartmouth, St. Joe's, and Albany. So not a lot of they front load their schedule, as we know, as we've seen in the past years. But you have an opportunity. You're probably going to finish above 500. I don't think that's a question at this point. But when it looks to the Ivy League, you go 1-4. You almost eliminate yourselves.
No, you're out.
I think you're out, right?
Yeah, you're definitely out. They can't lose this game.
Yeah,
this is it. This is
it for Penn.
Penn's season in the Ivy League comes down to this game.
In the Ivy League, yes. If you want to be in the top 4 and in the conference tournament, a chance. If not, you're looking at that 5 spot we've been talking about. That could be the 5th Ivy League team into the NCAA tournament without making your conference tournament. So you put yourself flat on the bubble in that case if you lose this game. That's what you were trying to get to here.
Right. And then the tough part becomes then if you're Penn, despite the RPI numbers, if you're not in the Ivy League tournament, you're missing the opportunity to boost your RPI numbers even more, because even if you only play in that semifinal, with what we've seen from the Ivy League so far this year, you're boosting your numbers. That semifinal game is going to be a game against another team that's top 10 in the RPI most likely. And you're putting, theoretically now, you're looking at Harvard, who likely makes the Ivy League tournament. They have a tough stretch here, but a win over Penn, and all of a sudden they become the team that maybe finds their way into that third or fourth spot. And so Harvard is, you have to be in. You can't put Penn in if Harvard is top 4 and that is in the Ivy League. And so you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball here.
Yeah.
So it really comes, I don't know. And depending on what happens elsewhere, it's going to be really hard, I think, for the committee. And we saw this with the Big Ten a couple of years ago. It's going to be really hard for the committee to put a 5th Ivy League team in.
Doesn't make the conference tournament.
Right. When you've got, you might have another ACC team around, another team in the Big Ten, a team that loses in a heartbreaking fashion in the Patriot League Championship. There are going to be other teams that late in the year are going to be able to make statements that Penn won't be able to make.
Right. This game is so important for Harvard, too, because Harvard, you just get blown out against Cornell. I mean, it was ugly. And Harvard, they've not been great in the last 2 games. They go and play Colgate, and they win that game by 1. They made, it was 7-6, 8-7, something like that, shooting well below their regular percentage. So imagine, Harvard struggling, limping to the finish line, finishing in 5th if this were the case, because you lose to Penn. I mean, it's going to be tough to beat Princeton or Yale, even if you go down the stretch here. So imagine that losing streak to the committee. I know RPI and everything else, there's other factors here, but you don't want to limp to the finish, despite the fact that you might have some good wins under your belt and a good RPI from playing in a good conference. So this is why this game's good for Harvard, because you can say, all right, we got one in the bank. And then you go and play Princeton and Yale, and maybe because you're playing a little bit looser, you're a little more confident, maybe you got a shot in those games. But if you lose to Penn, those games are going to be tough. I know they'll be more motivated than ever, but for both, this could really swing the pendulum one way or another in the Ivy League as a whole, too.
This be like we were talking with BU. This is Harvard's game of, hey, we're not just a fun story in February, in March. We're a team to be reckoned with down the stretch.
There's teams in Boston,
They're very similar, apparently.
It's a wild weekend out here in Boston. You got the marathon.
Yes.
The Celtics are playing.
And in the postseason.
Yeah, it's Easter.
Yes.
The whole thing.
It's going to be a fun weekend. This is going to be good. I got a most important game. Let's go to the ACC. Speaking of teams that, I don't know what's going on. Syracuse at North Carolina. This is a gigantic game for North Carolina. For Syracuse, they're done. Their season's over when the season comes to an end. They're not going to the postseason here. But in terms of pride, if you're Syracuse, you really want to go out like this. You lost to Albany. You give up a lead at home against Cornell.
Yeah.
This isn't Syracuse lacrosse. So this is all pride for the Orange. What do you got? For North Carolina, their numbers are still okay. You look at who North Carolina has beaten, and compared to some of the other teams in the ACC, their wins actually hold up. They've got a win over Brown, who just knocked off Penn. Got a win over Richmond that continues to look pretty good. They've done it at the beginning of the season, but the last 2 games offensively for North Carolina are alarming. 6 goals only against Duke. Only 4 goals last week against Virginia. And it's the reliance on Chris Gray. Chris Gray had a hand in all 4 goals last week against Virginia, 3 goals and 1 assist, and it had a hand in 4 of the 6 goals against Duke. Somebody else has to do it. He can only do so much, and he's getting all of the attention of the defense, and you're seeing it with these ACC teams that know what they've seen him a couple of times a year over the last couple of seasons. You know what you're going to get. Some other people for North Carolina have to step up. And if it's not for this year, it's for next year and years prior. Some of these young guys who are freshmen, sophomores, juniors on that offense, they have to do more. And it's not just for them to try to make a run this year, but Chris Gray's time at North Carolina is coming to an end, as great as he's been. So some of these other guys got to step up.
This is North Carolina is such a fascinating case of an RPI and a couple of nice wins versus the eye test. Because from watching all these teams, if you just include the ACC in this, I'll just keep that, they don't seem like, we just talked about this, a top 3 team in the ACC. You know, from watching them. We've seen Notre Dame. We've seen Duke dominate today. You've seen Virginia and the talent they have, and it just doesn't feel like North Carolina is within those top 3 teams, yet their RPI is as good or not, if not better, than all of them. So that's what makes this game so important, especially when it comes to the eye test for North Carolina. You know, and you win this game, yeah, you're probably still in the conversation. You're definitely still in the conversation.
Yeah.
But you win an 11-10. You know, you win it ugly,
Different.
You win it 10-9 instead of going out and winning 15-8 or something like that, where North Carolina, you can see they're head and shoulders above a team like Syracuse, and Syracuse has been prone to a blowout this year by good teams. So I think that for Carolina, this is an eye test game in my estimation, because this ain't going to help your RPI all that much.
No. Syracuse, I think it's like 31 in the RPI.
If you got a similar RPI, you look down the stretch, you're like, they still look as good as everybody else. And to me, that will start to swing the pendulum a little bit more, whether or not they get in at the end of the year too. My
other question for Syracuse is, like, what team do you get? You get the team that lost to Albany, or the team that actually was beating Cornell at the Dome? Because that, for the first 2.5 quarters on Monday night, you were like, oh, is this the Syracuse team that we should have been seeing all year? And then Cornell obviously turned it on.
Yeah, they led 7-2 at one point, I believe, in that game. And they were rocking and rolling in the Dome. And we'll go right into my next one here, because
what's your game to keep an eye on?
I'm looking at Cornell Army this week.
It's a good game.
I'll start with Connor Busick. And he outcoached Gary Gait and Dave Petramala in that game. I mean, you look at the adjustments they made over the course of the third and fourth quarter and the way they were able to come back. Yeah, you get it to your guys and the little intricacies that they implemented. Anytime you can see a team make a comeback, it's a game of runs, but at the same time, they did some different stuff to Syracuse in the second half, and he goes down and out-coaches 2 of the greats to ever do it. And I know it's been a learning process for Syracuse this year. I think much more than I anticipated.
Me too.
In terms of the adjustment between new coaching staff and these players that they just have to get to know. Like, this isn't their recruiting class. These aren't their guys. This is John Desko's team at the end of the day. And now Gary Gait and Dave Petramala, in one way or another, co-coaching, I guess, in one way, because you see a lot of Dave Petramala on the screen for good reason, but he's very involved. That's all I'll say about that. Meanwhile, Connor Busick's done an excellent job with this Cornell team, and you saw that in a primetime game in the Dome, a rivalry game at that. They were able to pull this one out. Now you got to play Army, which I think makes it really interesting, because you're coming off that game, and you got to play an Army team that's 9-2 this year. Just a 3-goal loss to Rutgers, who Travis is very high on, and a 1-goal loss to Lehigh, conference game, which I understand. And a player in Brendan Nichter, number 1 in the nation in points. Wyatt Schupler, 12th in the NCAA in save percentage. I kind of love to watch this matchup to see if Army can go out there and beat Cornell and do something for the Patriot League. And Army would be 10-2 at that point. Their RPI would shoot up the door with Cornell number 6. You never know what can happen down this final stretch. And Army kind of been quiet all year long. Not really people talking about Army because of Loyola and them being so up and down, BU when they come on the scene. So Army is an opportunity here with a nice record and some decent wins to go out there and beat Cornell. And that's going to be a game I'm going to watch.
Army is the team that I think is just stuck there in the middle of the rankings for the entire year. Yeah. It's like they're somewhere between 9 and 13. And just every week you look at the results and they go, oh, they won by 2.
Yeah.
Or, oh, they lost by 1 to Lehigh, but that's not a bad loss. They dropped down a couple of spots. Oh, they won another game by 2 or 3. Okay, that has been Army all year. I love the fact that some of in these weeks of the season, when we get these big non-conference games that are top 20 games out of the league, because the league is so intense, but then all of a sudden you come out. And so you're getting a Cornell team that is, I think, playing its best lacrosse of the season against an Army team that's playing really good lacrosse. And so now we see, not just in February what these teams look like, but now we see a team toward the top of the Patriot League against a team toward the top of the Ivy League. And what do they look like in April? Because those are the teams that's what we want to know. We want to know, what does a top team in the Patriot League look like against a top team in the Ivy League this time of the year, not just at the very beginning. So I think that's one of the most intriguing parts for me.
And I think this could answer some questions maybe about Cornell. I mean, if you play the 4 quarters against Yale now, if you're Cornell, does that game go the same way? The way Yale came back in that game, the way Yale's been playing ever since,
I don't know.
I think that Yale's a bit of a different team. So, yes, it's a great win over Yale, but Yale's a bit of a different team now. You beat Ohio State on a bad day. Ohio State's been up and down all year. You beat Syracuse as well. So, Cornell, yeah, they've been impressive this year. They've had some nice wins. Now you got a chance for even also a nice win on a conference in the midst of your Ivy League gauntlet that I think is an intriguing opportunity for both teams here.
We got a matchup between 2 first-team All-Americans or possible first-team All-Americans in Brendan Nichtern versus Gavin Adler.
Yeah.
I mean, remember what Adler did against Ohio State and Jack Myers, which is in terms of like importance of one guy to an offense, similar to what you're going to see with Army and Nichtern.
Yeah, Nichtern
he is so important to what Army wants to do offensively. So can Cornell's defense, being able to put Adler on your number 1 guy and take him out, does that have a similar impact on Army that it did on Ohio State? I'll be fascinated to see that too.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So that's Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'll be calling game, but you can watch it. So
yeah, I'll take a look at that.
give me some notes when you're done.
Yeah, let you know.
I can watch the replay, but it should be fun.
Yeah. You know who's having a fun time this year?
Who was having a fun time this year?
Jacksonville, the Dolphins.
Yes, they are.
You got John Galloway jumping into the locker room. He's dancing around.
He's really, selling the program. Dolphins.
Hey, first win in program history over Richmond this past weekend, a gigantic victory, and I had a chance to catch up with a couple of the guys that have been key in this hot season so far for the Dolphins, Luke Millican and Max Waldbaum. So from Jacksonville, coming off the win over Richmond this past weekend, we've got Luke Millican, the goalie, and Max Waldbaum. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. You're both transfers. So, Max, I'll start with you. Why Jacksonville for this extra year?
I think Jacksonville really seemed like kind of the perfect fit for me. When I reached out into the transfer portal, obviously I wanted to, push myself and go to the best school that I could. I had a lot of people that believed in me and I believed in myself. I really wanted to compete at the highest level. But mostly I came for Coach Galloway. I had reached out to him. He reached out to me. And he let me know that he really felt that this team was just a couple key pieces away from breaking onto the scene. And I believed them and he got me fired up. He's pretty good at motivational talks. And then also the opportunity to pursue an MBA. That's something that I've wanted to do. Just kind of continuing my educational career as well as lacrosse. And so it seemed like the perfect fit. And then obviously the Florida weather was a little bonus add-on after the 2 more important ones. And it's been incredible. It's been more than I could have ever imagined. And I've had a really good time.
Luke, what about for you?
Yeah, a lot of the same key pieces that Max mentioned on. Obviously, as a goalie, having Coach Galloway as your head coach is a huge selling point. But I'm sure Max would agree, coming from D3 to D1 and me not seeing a whole lot of playing time. This program presented a lot of new opportunities. We talked about Richmond, and there's a lot ahead of us still. So I think it's a unique experience to do something that you can't do at a lot of places.
Yeah, Luke, you hit on it. I mean, you're playing for somebody who at your position has accomplished just about everything you can possibly do in the game, just about at every level. What have you learned from Coach Galloway in terms of being a goalie?
Yeah, it's tough because he's unreal at what he does. So sometimes it's hard for that to translate over when he's explaining stuff. And that really sunk in. I was coaching with him over winter break, and he was explaining some of the seventh offender concepts. And I was like, we're talking to high schoolers right now. Like, you're making this look really easy footwork wise and everything, but like, this is really advanced stuff that you're trying to piece together. So you learn a lot really quick. And there's definitely a learning curve, but I don't think you can get that type of goalie coaching anywhere in the country.
Max, obviously it's an exciting year for everybody because it feels like things have come back to normal. But for you, I mean, this is your first full season since 2019, right? Like, you played 5 regular season games last year for Tufts. You played as many postseason games last year as you did in the regular season. And then obviously 2020. I mean, how awesome is it? And how much do you just have appreciated the ability to every week, you're going out there and you get a chance to play?
It's been amazing. That's half the reason I even came back at all, is because, when I finished my career at Tufts, I felt like there was a lot left on the plate, a lot more meat left on the bone. And it's been so much fun. We love doing it. That's why we continue to do it, moving on instead of going to get a job. It's been pretty unreal to go to practice every day and look forward to competing at the highest level. That's what it's all about.
Luke, you mentioned not having an opportunity to play a whole lot during your career at North Carolina, but you were somebody who competed for that job and at one point had the starting job earlier in your career. What did you learn from your experience there in Chapel Hill that now you use when you're having the opportunity to play every week?
Yeah, I think it gave me a lot of experience for this year and just relating to the guys like freshmen and underclassmen that might not be seeing the field right now. You develop a lot of empathy with that when you ride the pine for 3.5 years. But I also I'm on the scout team there for quite some time and saw some pretty good shooters. So I learned you learn to be patient. You learn how to get over getting scored on, because when you've got Chris Gray, Will Perry, Tanner Cook, Justin ripping on you every day, it's like, all right, well, yeah, that went in from 18, but we can move on. So you learn a lot of patience and poise. So when you get in big games, things might swing one way or the other, but you can rebound pretty quick.
Yeah, and I have to think, I look at a lot of the transfers that came in. You guys surprised, I think, everybody in beating Duke. But, for you, Luke, that was every week for you guys in the ACC, playing another Duke or a Virginia or a Syracuse. What kind of experience did you feel like you could bring to the team, knowing you hadn't played in a ton of those big games? You were there every week in playing against some of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I think in those games, there's a lot of emotion. And I think when you're what a lot of outsiders would call us, you're mid-major or whatever the phrase is for it, the emotions can get to you. So kind of learning how fight through swings in a game there, and just learning how to respond to kind of the outside pressure of, depth chart versus depth chart here. You see that there's a lot more outside of that goes into these games. Even at UNC, we had some pretty good rosters 8 years and we had some bad ones. And I saw our team win and lose games when we should win and weren't supposed to win. And it's a lot of buying into what the coaches bring forth that week for the game plan and executing that.
Max, we were talking about this before, but you're from Denver. You come up here to Massachusetts to play college lacrosse, and now you're in Florida. There are people in their entire lives that don't live in three such different locales. You've done it over the course of 5 or 6 years. Where do you prefer?
I think I'll always be a Denver boy in my heart, but I sure have enjoyed all the places I've been. Boston is an awesome city. Even the little hometown of Somerville and Medford and Tufts will definitely always have a special place in my heart. But this is totally different, and the weather here is a lot nicer. I can see the sky on most days. That doesn't really happen in Massachusetts. But sometimes it's a little too hot. I think I'm kind of fall back on my fundamentals. I'm more of a temperate weather guy.
Yeah, because Colorado, you get kind of the mix of both. You get the sunny skies of Florida, but maybe more the temperatures of Boston throughout the year. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Yeah, that's why so many people want to move to Denver. It's a great place to live. We talk about Tufts, and we've seen a number of people, of guys like you, players who have played at the Division III level at a really high level that have then transferred in Division I later in their careers and shown that the talent gap isn't that big. What kind of chip on your shoulder is there, wanting to be another guy that can show, hey, you know what? I wasn't just a great Division III player. I'm a really, really good college lacrosse player, period.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a chip on my shoulder there. I've kind of always felt like that. I think anyone that wants to call themselves a lacrosse fan knows that top level Division III and top level Division II players can play with the best of them. And people that don't think that are proven wrong over and over again. Like when we as the Tufts team played Dartmouth in 2020, that didn't go the way of them, and a lot of people were doubting us, and it wasn't really a close game. But then in terms of chip on my shoulder, I've always had one. I've wanted to compete to kind of prove to myself and prove to others, that people saying things it doesn't really matter. kind of just brush it off. And it's been great. I think the biggest chip on my shoulder was when at the beginning of my senior season, we really didn't think we were going to play at all. We didn't start until April, and watching some of those games online of the D1 guys playing and not being able to play was infuriating, because I felt that we should be playing and I could be out there and they weren't prepared. And I don't know, it made me very angry. And that's about when I decided I wasn't going to give it up.
And I mean, I think it's like something I see with your team now too, Luke, is like you guys at Jacksonville, you don't get notoriety at the beginning of the season. And like you guys probably internally felt like, hey, this team is really good. We can compete with all these teams. But everybody else nationally is like, all right, well, go out and prove it. And you guys have consistently done that. How has that kind of fueled not only your early season success, but now once you've gotten to the SoCon, wanting to continue to prove everybody wrong, like, hey, we are one of the best teams in this league, and maybe we are the team to beat in the SoCon?
Yeah, I think we were kind of joking about it last night. Like, we've seen a lot of the preseason picks from everyone on everyone else in our conference. And there's still a lot of time left. Like, don't get us wrong, we haven't done anything yet. Our goals are still out in front of us, but I think it definitely adds fuel to the fire. And, you know, every week when you show up to practice, even after a big win, it makes it a lot easier to hit the reset button and keep moving forward.
John Galloway was talking on Paul Carcaterra's podcast, and one of his philosophies with you guys in terms of social media, which is so different than I think than most other coaches in the country, in terms of he tells you to embrace it, right? Like, he wants you to want to go out and do stuff that people are talking about. Is that part of the philosophy?
Yeah, I don't think we're necessarily we're not chasing any media attention or anything, but I think if you have the right perspective going into it, whether it's negative about your program or positive, either way, you can use it as fuel. It's just perspective. So if you have a mature enough locker room there where it doesn't become outside noise, it never hurts.
Max, everybody I think has seen the video now, and multiple videos of John Galloway coming into the locker room after some of your big wins. What kind of dancer is Coach Galloway?
Coach Galloway is an okay dancer. He's better at a lot of other things, for sure. But, you know, I think he kind of embraces what we do on the field. He coaches with a lot of passion, and he just lets it out. I know he doesn't have any dancing plans when he comes in the locker room. I think he's just so excited that he kind of lets loose. And it's pretty sweet. As much as his dance moves suck, you can tell that he cares a lot and he has a lot of passion. And it's been pretty awesome to be a part of. Yeah,
Luke, what is that? What's it like for a coach to play for a coach that feels like, I mean, the passion feels like something that, like, you guys just scored a gigantic goal and he shows it. Like, what's it like to play for somebody like that?
Yeah, I think it makes it easy for everyone to get behind. Like, you're excited to make plays, and I think it's been contagious. Like, from day one when we got here, at practice when you're doing a small drill, there would be an awesome goal that someone would put off, and there wouldn't be a lot of applause from the fellas, and it would be like everyone stop what we're doing. Everyone give this guy a round of applause. He deserves it. And so now at this point, it's kind of become a secondhand nature at practice and translates into games. So it's the little things there that show up in the big moments, and it just affects the whole program.
We had talked about it before. You guys are pretty new to this program, so obviously this has to feel so great, but I'm assuming that seeing it through the eyes of a guy like a Jeremy Winston, who's been part of this program for a while, has to mean even more. Like, what's it like to see some of these guys who have put 3 and 4 years into this program and be a part of this ride that you guys are experiencing so far here in 2022?
I think it's pretty incredible, pretty special, what a lot of those guys have built down here. And you can see it every day. It's not just now, when they're getting the first program win against Richmond. It's every day in the fall, and it's every day in the winter. And when guys didn't have to be down here, but they chose to because they want to get extra work in, it's been pretty inspiring, and it's awesome to have teammates like that, guys that you trust, guys that you really want to play for, and just work as hard as they do, seeing where they've come from, what they had to do to get here. it's very inspiring, and it makes you want to play even harder, for the guy to your left and right. I think it all culminates down to a lot of positive emotion, guys that have experience, guys that have been there before, have been on, a lot of losing games, a lot of winning games. And you just want to, try to help them achieve their goals as much as you want to achieve yours.
Luke, I'll leave you in this one. I felt like that game that you guys lost against Utah, as probably painful as it was almost like a reset button for you guys. Like, hey, all right, we've had a great season so far, but it all could be like pulling out from under us. What kind of learning experience was that for you guys heading down this stretch of this season that, like, hey, if we don't show up on a given day, anything can happen?
Yeah, I think you learn a lot after a game like that. I think everyone took a little bit out of it, whatever it was. But it's great that it happened then. Everyone likes to talk about Duke in February, but they have been that model for a reason. You don't want to lose March and April and May games. You want it to happen early. And I think we were mature enough, and the coaches were mature enough that we were able to respond. And we didn't have necessarily like an impactful game the following week, but we were able to get our mindset right, and it didn't break apart the locker room like it could. I've seen it happen before, a loss like that, but everyone kind of took what they could do as a learning experience for everyone, and we were able to turn things around, I think, emotionally.
Well, it feels like you guys are playing some really good lacrosse right now. We can't wait to see how you guys finish up. We appreciate the time. Good luck as you get ready to hit the road here this week, and we'll be watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, for having us.
Really fun to talk with those guys, and not big fans of John Galloway's dancing moves, but big fans of John Galloway as a coach, and I am too. He has done a really good job with that program and really selling it, and he's found the right transfers, these guys included, to help boost this program where they needed it.
That's what it's kind of a mixture now. You got to recruit, you got to find some good transfers, and see how good everybody acclimates over the course of a season. Not easy to do if you're a coach. A lot of pots that keep boiling.
It's like plugging holes. It's like, oh, you know what? We could really use an extra attackman. Let's go see what we can find.
Finding depth, yes,
exactly.
in all positions. All right. Heading to the women's side of
things
now.
Time for some quick picks.
Yes.
I'm kicking things off.
Yes, you are.
Because we got a double dip here for Colorado. The Pac-12, the women, they play the two games over the course of 3 days in the weekend, so Friday, Sunday. And we got two big games for the Buffaloes here for Colorado. They get both of them at home. So we're going to start on Friday. USC at Colorado. This is a game that USC won 11-7 the first time they played. That was back toward the beginning of March. I like the Trojans again. This USC team's got it going. I think they win 14-11. Putting up a lot of goals lately. USC has not been held to single-digit goals once this year, even in their losses. So I think they put up goals again, and I think they beat the Buffaloes.
Okay, how about the next game?
Then
Arizona State, your team.
I've been a big fan of the Sun Devils. Tim McCormick, we had him on the show last week. He's done such a terrific job since taking over that Sun Devils program. But they got to go to Colorado, and I think they come up on the short end of the stick. You look back to the first meeting, and this was the breakout game for Arizona State earlier this year. They smashed Colorado at home, 20-6 in Arizona. It was the first of back-to-back tough losses for Colorado. The second of back-to-back tough losses for Colorado. They had a tough road swing. They did these same two games in the same weekend, but two games on the road. So they had to go to California, to L.A. They lost to USC on Friday, and then this was the second game on Sunday at Arizona State. And they just struggled. Colorado made only one save in that game between three goals. They tried everything. They couldn't figure out how to stop Arizona State. Grace Donnelly, their starter, has done better since. She's got double-digit saves in two of her last three games. So I got Colorado winning 16-13. I still think it's kind of high scoring, but I got the Buffaloes getting a bounce-back win.
I like Arizona State in that game. I think the Pac-12 has turned into a three-team race. I think it's Stanford, USC, and Arizona State right now. In my opinion, I think that's where I think that those teams have separated themselves from the rest of the pack just by some of their wins, both in and out of conference this year.
Okay, well. I think Colorado's in that mix. I think Stanford and USC are the top two. I think Arizona State and Colorado are very similar there. Those semifinals, I think are going to be awesome.
Should be a fun tournament. All right, we move along here. Let's go to the Ivy League women. Yale at Cornell. And Yale at 8-2. They're 4-0 undefeated in the Ivy League. Cornell 7-5, 3-1 in the Ivy League. I've got Yale winning this 15-11. They're coming off a 1-goal win over Harvard. And, they've got some talent here, Yale. They've been rolling for a while. We talked about them a couple weeks ago on the show and just how well they've played. And they beat Army, a rolling Michelle Tumalo Army team, as they've sort of, taken, I'm not sure, control just yet, but they're a team to talk about in the Ivy League. I know Princeton is Princeton, but Princeton, we just saw their game against Maryland, and they let a lot of teams score. I know Maryland's really good, but you could score some goals on Princeton. So Yale, as I look forward there, too, I think that's something that Yale can do against them. Olivia Markert, one of these senior attackers who took that gap year, who had a great career up until the pandemic. In 2019, she scored 47 points, 3.5 points per game this year. That's second in the Ivy League. Going up against a good goalie, Katie McGahan, who is 47.6%. She is second in the Ivy League for Cornell. I think she tries to keep Cornell in it for as long as she can, but I think Yale able to edge them 15-11 the final there. And I think that Cornell, too, they come off a loss against Syracuse. I think that'll make them a little more battle-tested and, get back to the Ivy League and play and make it competitive, too. But I like Yale in this game.
All right, let's go to the Patriot League. And I got a did you know for you, Tom. Did you know there was more than just one record broken? We know Livy Rosenzweig became the Patriot League's all-time leader in points. You know there was more than one record broken last weekend.
For Loyola?
For Loyola.
Ooh, who else could have broken? Was it Sam Fielder? Did she break a record, too?
It was not. It was the team as a whole.
Okay.
Because this past weekend, Loyola won their 62nd straight Patriot League regular season game.
Wow.
Since joining the league in 2014, Loyola has never lost in conference play in the regular season. They are 62-0, which broke UMass's record in the Atlantic 10 of winning 61 straight conference games. So, so Loyola, now the all-time leader in conference regular season wins.
Wonderful.
They've got Army this weekend, and I think it continues. I've got the Greyhounds 19-11. We had Livy on earlier this week.
Yeah.
She has been so good. This Loyola team looks poised to be a Final Four contender this year, and I think it continues here. I think it's they're going to make it 63 straight Patriot League regular season wins.
I think I've said this before, but Loyola, you watch them play, they're very athletic. That they get up and down, they're physical, and they can score as well as anybody and defend as well as anybody. They are a really nice contender here as they move forward. And Michelle Tumalo has done such a great job with Army.
She has.
She came in with not a bare cupboard, but a lot of players weren't coming back, and she's done a really nice job with Army this year. I think they'll be competitive, maybe a little more competitive than that in this game, but it's just so tough to stop Loyola. I mean, they score with the best of them, honestly, in this country. So we will move on to two teams that score better than anybody in this country, right into Boston College and Duke. Duke, number 1 in the nation in scoring. Boston College, number 2.
What's the over-under for this game? Like 40?
40 goals, maybe? It is fascinating. You've got Kat Berry, 5.47 points per game. She's 9th in the nation. You got Charlotte North, 5.43 points per game. She's 11th in the nation. Duke's only loss coming to Syracuse, a game they led pretty big, and they ended up losing 18-16 late in that one. Syracuse came back on them. Duke has Boston College and then North Carolina to finish their season. They go to Chapel Hill after this.
The gauntlet.
It is fascinating. Both these and I know they score pretty well. Both these defenses are top 12 in the nation, too.
Yeah.
So they're not poor on defense. So what's it going to come down to? And I know coming off their last few games, completely different. And I think that might be an indicator of how this game's going to go. Duke, a 15-14 win over Virginia Tech. Conference game, that's probably closer than it should have been in the battle of the conference. BC goes outside of their conference. They beat Harvard 17-1. That tells me that there's a difference there for Boston College. And I think Duke's going to get off to a good start in this game, and I think they're going to learn those lessons from Syracuse. And I've got Duke winning 18-17. I got an upset.
Wow, upset alert.
For the Blue Devils. Yes, that is correct. I think that they can do it. And I mentioned this, I alluded to it earlier in the broadcast. I said that Boston College is kind of akin to this Virginia-type feel where they don't peak until later on in the season.
Yeah, except for they haven't done it
like
this year.
they might drop a game at some point, and it feels like this is the game they're going to do it. It might come down to the goalie. Sophia LaRose, 10 goals allowed per game, 41.9 save percentage. Rachel Hall, 8.64 goals against average, 40.4 save percentage. So Yes, she upped her game, Rachel Hall, at the end of last year, but she's going to get peppered, shot after shot after shot. And I think that Duke is going to be able to have the offensive firepower to keep up with Boston College in this one. And I think that, and for first lead, it's the fact that BC's coming off such a dominant performance. Not their fault by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, they only gave up one goal.
They gave up one goal, and all of a sudden you got a team that can score 18 on you. That's a bit of an adjustment there. And I know that Acacia Walker-Weinstein will do as much as she can, but sometimes it's just too hard to get you out of that flow that you had in your last game. So I am riding with the Blue Devils in one of their biggest wins.
Should have led the show. Tom thinks Duke is going to knock off Boston College. All right, well, I've got less hot takes the rest of the segment. Sorry to disappoint you.
We're going in. Travis like, I got some good ones you might like in women's quick picks today. I had this little thing brewing for you.
Yeah,
I might be wrong, but I think that could happen.
You call Arizona State my team. I picked Colorado, the one that I thought you would like. And you're like, no, I think Arizona State's going to win.
I do. They are a top 3
So
team.
now you finally buy in.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You told me. You convinced me. I'm a changed man.
All right. I'm going to the American, the AAC. Maybe the game between the two top teams in this league. We got Florida at Vanderbilt. Florida has won 7 straight games, the Gators have. It goes back, I think that first game of this streak was the win over Syracuse. Impressive victory for the Gators. They've won 12 consecutive games against Vanderbilt. They have been dominant in this series, and I think this continues. I got Florida 14-9. Couple of tough losses here for Vanderbilt in the last couple of weeks. They've lost 2 of their last 3, including a loss to Louisville, also lost to Temple on the road. Emma Lopinto tied for first in points per game by a freshman this year at 4.69 points per game. And I do want to give a shout out to the player she's tied with because it's a little off the beaten path. A name you probably don't know, Natalie Calandra-Ryan, plays for the Penguins of Youngstown State.
Okay.
So shout out to the Penguins there at Youngstown State. Natalie Calandra-Ryan tied with Emma Lopinto for most points by a freshman per game so far this year.
Gators, Commodores, and Penguins all in one fell
pick.
swoop.
There you go.
That's amazing. Oh, my, as they would say. All right. Vanderbilt's played a tough schedule this year.
They have.
They played a lot of really good teams. They're a test. That should be a good game. Okay. I got Big Ten. Michigan, Penn State women. Both these teams.
They could use a win.
They are limping in. They could use a win. Michigan's lost 4 straight. Penn State's lost 4 of the last 5, coming off a nice win over Pitt, 15-7. We've seen, how good Pitt can be at this year. So Penn State at 6-6, Michigan 9-5. Michigan coming off that loss to Ohio State. They've been turning the ball over too much. 17 turnovers against Ohio State, 17 against USC. Despite the fact that they're winning on the draw control, they just can't seem to keep possession. They can't seem to score. Single-digit goals in 6 of the last 7 games played. This is where, we've seen some of the other players on this team step up. This is where you kind of lose a Molly Garrett when you need somebody to score when it's getting really tough to do so. So we see that with Michigan. I will, though, pin it down to the goalie. Ariel Weissman, still one of the best in the nation. Top 3 goals against average, top 6, 51% save percentage. I like Michigan to keep Penn State off the board just enough. 10-8, my final there. Low-scoring Big Ten affair. Yeah,
I mean, both those teams at some point in this year have felt like a tournament team, and now it feels like both could use wins here down the stretch in the Big Ten. Finally, I'll finish out in the Big Ten here. Maryland at Ohio State. This is a Terps team that seems to be coming into what we think that Maryland could be. They're coming off a really impressive win over Princeton. They went down 3-0 earlier this week on the road in New Jersey against the Tigers. They then finished the game on a 19-6 run to win by 10 goals. 19-9 was your final in that one. Aurora, accordingly, just continues to be terrific. I mean, look, Charlotte North deserves to get all the attention. Jamie Ortega does. But Aurora, accordingly, is going to be a Tewaaraton finalist. She has to be. She's on one of the best teams in the country, and she's leading the nation in points. Another 5 goals for her. Hannah Lubecker also has been really key. 5 goals, that tied a season high for her in goals. The two of them, along with all the different supporting pieces that Maryland has. It's a Terps team that isn't getting a lot of national press, but when it comes down to the tournament, they are a team that if you're one of those top teams, you want to avoid.
Kind of feels like, 2019, where not a lot of people were talking about Maryland, even though, I think they dropped a game or 2 here and there in the regular season. I can't remember exactly.
But even there, you had Megan Taylor, who garnered Aurora accordingly is not getting, and I think it's because we've had these transcendent type players elsewhere. But, I mean, Aurora accordingly has been fantastic.
Maryland's been really penalized by losing to James Madison, and they sort of fell off the radar a bit after that game. But to me, that could have been the best thing that happened to them. Gave them a wake-up call midway through the season in a game that was out of conference, a game that JMU really needed. I think a lot of factors came together there, and Maryland probably deserves to be in that top 5 conversation right now. I mean, amongst the BC, North Carolina, Northwestern, Stony Brook, Maryland, to me, are the best 5 in the country, right? And you
forgetting Syracuse?
And you get Loyola in there as well. I don't think I am forgetting Syracuse. Okay. I think all those teams are better.
Okay.
I mean, Northwestern did beat Syracuse. Stony Brook almost beat Syracuse.
Syracuse
beat early.
Syracuse beats Stony Brook.
I understand that.
But if you do the transitive property in one, you have to do it again.
I don't have to do anything
it happened early in the season, just like that Northwestern game.
Okay, so Syracuse, you mean?
Yeah, Stony Brook lost to both Northwestern and Syracuse.
That's true.
Like, I'm just saying, like, I think Stony Brook's a really talented team, but you're downgrading Syracuse despite the fact that they won the game.
I just believe that
they continue to win the game.
Do you think Maryland's better than Syracuse?
No.
You don't?
No. I think Maryland's really good, but I think if you put them head-to-head right now, Syracuse wins.
Interesting. I think Maryland wins that game right now.
Oh,
I think they would have a lot of difficulties stopping that offense with Cordingley and Lou Becker and company.
And I think Maryland's defense would have a lot of difficulties in stopping Syracuse's offense.
Maryland has the #1 goalie in the nation right now in Emily Sturm.
That's fine. She's not playing Syracuse.
Okay.
She's not playing. Right. She hasn't played Syracuse, Boston College, or North Carolina.
The ACC is very strong. Syracuse will be battle
or
tested.
Duke. I mean, I think, like, you look at those offenses, they're better than anybody else in the country.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
And they haven't played Northwestern yet. We'll find out Maryland, Northwestern.
There we go. We will find a lot out there 2 weeks from now.
Because that will be the best offense Maryland has played all year.
Yeah, that should be one of the best games of the year. Can't wait to watch it. And just speaking of those teams, we happened to speak with Madison Doucette.
Yes, speaking of Northwestern.
For Northwestern. Let's check out that conversation now. So the goalie at Northwestern, Madison Doucette, joins us now. Madison, as always, thank you for your time. I think I've asked this to a couple coaches this year. How much do you love playing at home? It feels like you guys have such a great advantage there, and you play always so well. You know, what's it like, that atmosphere, the way you've been able to embrace it over the last few years?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, we have great fans. We have a great fan base here in Chicago, student athletes, everyone from the community. And then you add to the fact that whether we're inside or outside, we have one of the most gorgeous fields in the country. I can get caught zoning out, staring at the city at times if we're outside. So I'm never going to complain about playing at home.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Joe Spallina about that. I mean, when you had Stony Brook come to town, you had a great start in that game. He goes, yeah, there was a light show and all this is going on. Our athletes were a little like, okay, what's going on? I'm like, there's something to that, right?
Yeah, there's an intimidation factor. It's a lot of pomp and circumstance. It kind of reminds me of like NHL teams as they come out, lights dim, you go for a tunnel situation. So I definitely think it's something that catches teams' eyes. I know I'd be a little envious if I was on the other side watching that. So I'm definitely happy to be the one in purple when it comes down to that time.
I mean, you mentioned the facilities, like that indoor facility with all glass that overlooks the lake, and then your field when you're outside is right there overlooking the lake. When you first saw it, like, what goes through your head?
I mean, I actually didn't know the indoor was being built. I knew something was happening, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to be when I committed. I loved the school as it was. Was that a bonus? Absolutely. I'm sitting in it as we speak. That's been amazing. But no matter where we are, I feel like we just have amazing resources, amazing facilities, and it's just endlessly grateful, especially with Chicago winters, to be able to enjoy the snow from the inside, look out over the lake. It's a beautiful place to play, but it's also obviously extremely functional from a lacrosse aspect.
Yeah, much warmer in there. They call it the Windy City for a reason, and you just don't want to screw with that, especially not in the winter. Your offense ranks 5th in the country, and obviously you've played some of the other best offenses in the land. But I wonder for you, with all the firepower, what's it like in practice?
Competitive. That's the biggest thing. I think we all got here because we're like that. We all continue to have success because we're like that. So you'll get some bickering between attack and defense in the best way possible. Everyone just wants to succeed and do their job. And I think our offensive and our defensive units are just so well matched. It's so much fun. There's nothing like, those fakes that Aaron Kuykendall throws. You're going to see those in games or Other teams might not even have that in their repertoire. El Hampton finishes around the crease like no one ever seen. So it's definitely the best way to sharpen the knife when you have those guys on your side.
You know, from someone with your perspective who gets to see it from such a unique angle at that, I mean, obviously Izzy goes down prior to the season. How did the offense, did you see, evolve after that into what it's become now?
They did an amazing job. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. They did a great job stepping up. I mean, we've known we've had a deep bench. We've had a deep bench every year I've been here. I think this year is no exception. In fact, may even be the strongest team we've had. So they stepped up. They rallied around it. Isabel herself has been a fantastic resource in helping them grow, helping them see, sharing her vision, teaching some of the younger players. It's just been awesome to watch them respond and take on that role. And I think it's really led to a dynamic offense that'll only get better when she's able to rejoin us after recovery.
Obviously, the 2 losses for you guys this year against the 2 teams that you probably want to beat on your way to the ultimate goal for you guys. It's Boston College and North Carolina. I wonder, both those games are relatively early on, obviously. So what have you guys learned from those games that you then took away to beat teams like Syracuse or Stony Brook or some of the other big wins you've had?
Yeah, we definitely went for trial by fire. We had a lot of those top teams in the first 6 or so weeks of season. I think we really just learned to kind of buckle down, stick to our guns. I think testing that early and showing what we needed to be and what we needed to work on was the best possible way. We've stuck to ourselves. We stuck to the way we play here, the way Kelly coaches us. We haven't changed that, but we've also seen the little holes that may happen defensively or what offensive looks might not work. And testing against the best is really just the best way. It really matters, the best team when it comes down to it in May. So if we slipped up a little bit in early February or later into the season, like these things happen, we're human, but we also can kind of see that metric of success and use that as our scale moving forward.
Can you kind of feel it now? A couple games to go in the regular season, Big Ten tournament, a couple weeks. Are things starting to get, a little more intense? You know, can you feel it, the vibe of the team?
Yeah, I think we're always bringing that intensity. I think that's the best thing about this program is we're always firing on all cylinders. I think it's just more the refinement. We feel good with where we are. We also only have 2 games regular season left in kind of a month of scheduling. So we're just excited for the chance to buckle down and take some time to reflect on ourselves and get better. The goal is always to be an unrecognizable team by the end of the season, and we want that to happen on a week in, week out basis. Scott Hiller's been huge on that the last couple of weeks. So you can kind of feel it. You can feel the excitement, but not much changes in the day-to-day.
I want to go back to that BC game real quick because you faced 41 shots. Have you ever in your life faced a barrage like that?
I don't think so. I can't say I didn't like it, though. I do think that's the best way to stay warm as a goalie. I will say my body wasn't super happy after that one, but I guess that comes with being a senior. Like I'm getting a little old over here. But that's what you want to see as a goalie, as a defense. Seeing as many reps as you can that early in the season is amazing. And then throughout the course of the game, stay fresh, stay sharp. And also you can definitely emphasize the one more mentality when you know you're going to see 20 more shots and a half.
That kind of gets the feel. Sometimes games that you guys play get like that. And you think about the style in which you get to play, sometimes with the ride, of course, as well. How much fun is it to play goalie there at Northwestern?
It's fun. I think I get a lot of leeway. I get a lot of space to do kind of what I want to do and try things stylistically. And I think that's the best part. Our whole goal unit, we could not be more different across the board. And our defense really can play with any of us, which makes it super fun. And I enjoy running around the field like a crazy person at times. I think the fans might not love when I'm doing that. They definitely have some questions. My parents get asked in the stands, what is she doing? Which I think is hilarious. But I think changing the game over time, like it's obviously such a dynamic sport, growing and adapting. And if our team is the one that gets people to try something new or push something, play a different style, that's an incredible honor.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's fun to watch. And you keep making plays, then they'll stop asking questions when they trust that you know what you're doing. You were like a goal scorer and a point scorer when you played hockey. And so I wonder, what do you prefer? Like, do you prefer being the backstop of the defense, or do you sometimes miss the days where you're putting up goals and assists on the hockey ice?
I miss hockey itself. I will say that much. I joke with my teammates. They all get to celebrate and score goals and throw their stick. And if I make a save and throw my stick, we're about to have some other problems. That is simply not allowed. But I mean, there's something to be said about being that last line of defense, the trust that your team gives you. It's really just like an amazing opportunity, such an honor. So I miss the goal scoring days. I miss being on the ice, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Anchoring down this defense is exactly where I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, that transitions well into what you're going to do for Team USA and the lacrosse field this upcoming summer in the World Games on the Sixes team. I mean, the parallels there between hockey and Sixes, how does that impact you in terms of how productive you are in goal for such a different format in which you are peppered with shots and you do have to bring the ball out? Like, how does all that mesh?
Yeah, I mean, I think we say 41 shots in the BC game. That's what you're going to see in a Sixes game, but you're going to see it in 32 minutes instead of 60. Which is amazing. I think it's really a test of the athleticism of a goaltender, which is something I pride myself on being able to play in kind of all ways, get outside the cage, make those leadership decisions communication-wise. So it's been amazing. I think it's just such a dynamic look for lacrosse, and then being able to quarterback that play. I know I've spoken on it before, but that ball goes in the net. You don't have the chance to hang your head in the best possible way. You could have picked it up, quarterback the play. You can turn that goal immediately into an assist if you want to. And I think that's the coolest thing that can really let even like younger goalies too. They're going to be able to have some fun and shift that mentality quickly instead of watching the ball slowly be brought back up, new draw. It's just a fun dynamic.
And just, I mean, it's a fun format, but it has to be so cool to also know that you're playing in the World Games with the hopes of putting this sport at the ultimate level of playing in the Olympics. Does it feel like a responsibility on top of this incredible honor of like trying to put this sport on the best display possible?
Absolutely. I mean, since I was little, I'm more of a hockey player, but my goal is ultimately then to go to the Olympics. And the fact that I could be a factor in how it gets there before it even does so, hopefully in 2028, is just an incredible honor and an amazing opportunity. I think it adds some pressure, but anytime you're wearing the red, white, and blue and you get that opportunity, you know, so many people would kill to be in your shoes, that pressure is going to be there. That weight's going to be there. It's also what fuels us on. It's what it did in 2019, and it's what I expect it to do this summer as well.
Yeah, you've already done it before,
yeah.
You know, and now you're doing it in a little bit of different format. I did read, you know, in an article that they asked about you about the being peppered with shots. You mentioned the goldfish memory, and obviously we know what that is via Ted Lasso. So is this a Ted Lasso reference? Are you a big fan of the show?
I have watched it quite a few times with our field hockey team over here at Northwestern, and then my dad is a big fan. So you can pretty much always count on him texting me goldfish after a game or whatever that may be if it doesn't always go our way. It's also just kind of the key to being a goalie. If you dwell on that last shot, you're not going to have the same jump you'd have for the next one. You want to be remembering the good stuff, not the bad stuff, and playing accordingly. So the goldfish definitely comes into play, whether it's Ted Lasso or Gary Doucette.
I mean, you guys have had a lot of good stuff to remember here for the last several weeks. You got 2 games left, as Tom mentioned. You got Hopkins coming up, and then the showdown with Maryland to finish up the regular season. Where's this team at? Like, do you guys feel like you're playing your best lacrosse here as we get ready for May?
I think we're at a great spot, but I mean, the goal is that the best is yet to come. I know we're working every day. We're having hard practices. We're pushing in the weight room. We're watching the film. So with the time we're spending, we want the best to be yet to come. Mentality comes into it. Obviously, every team can win when it comes down to it. Any given Sunday kind of mentality. So we want to put the best product we can out on the field for ourselves, for our program, for our fans. And we're just ready to keep pushing through into the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, you've been so impactful on the field. I did want to ask you, you know, here at the end about your impact off the field, too. Back in June of 2020, you wrote that essay for the USA Lacrosse magazine called Follow Your Path, really you coming out to the rest of the world of lacrosse and even beyond that. It was very inspiring to read, I think, for a lot of people. What kind of impact did you see after that came out, and you came out in that as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing opportunity for US Lacrosse to give me that platform and let me share this story. Started with a couple DMs with Michelle Tumalo, and next thing I knew, I was writing a story and it was getting picked up by Outsports, which was something I never expected. It's something we preach here at Northwestern. Our Department for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion is nothing short of amazing, really doing all the things to help any minority identity someone might have. And so the response I got to that story was just absolutely amazing. Kids reaching out to me, parents reaching out to me. Something I'm endlessly grateful for. It's a position I never thought I'd be in. If you would have asked me 2-3 years ago if I would be having those conversations, especially on that scale, I would have said you're out of your mind. But it's been a really cool opportunity. Also, I think brings me closer with just my teammates. They get to know more about me in a deeper way, and I think opening up that dialogue is so important, not just around the world, but even in a team culture. In that team setting, the more you can be yourself, the more you're going to have success. That's something Selena Lasota told me my freshman year. She was like, hey, we don't care who you are, just be you when you come in. And that's something that stuck with me to this day. And I think affected my ability to write that piece and then also just continue to be myself on my team with the amazing people around here.
What needs to be the next step in not just lacrosse, but beyond that, the sports world, our world, do you think, to be more inclusive and embrace diversity more?
I think conversation is the first step, but also education. I know right now the trans athletes are in the limelight, and there's a lot of rules and regulations that need to be adjusted in order to include their participation and do so in the right way that's fair, but also validating to identities. So keeping to have those conversations, they're not easy. I participate in them on a daily basis, and I still don't always feel like I know what to say or what to do. But having those conversations is the biggest thing, whether it's gender identity, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's race, whether it's socioeconomic status. They're all aspects that need to be considered as we talk about recruiting, as we talk about diversity of a team. So just kind of continuing to push the envelope and not getting complacent is the biggest thing. Just education, communication, conversation, and develop from there.
Oh, Madison, all that you're doing both on and off is extremely impressive. Keep being you, and good luck here as you finish off the regular season. We can't wait to watch what you guys do as we head into May.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Go Cats.
Thanks, Madison.
I just need to make reference to the fact that Tom, picking up on a Ted Lasso reference there, but Tom hasn't finished watching Ted Lasso.
I'm stuck on season 2.
You need to finish the show. It's been out for like a year.
Yeah, I've been really trying to plug my way, but I watch a lot of sports, so give me some credit for that. And
you've got like Monday through Thursday where you've got some time, just like one episode a night.
There's lacrosse.
They're like 30 minutes,
day.
man.
There's all sorts of stuff on. Now baseball, like I'll watch anything, anywhere, anytime.
From like 9:30 to 10 o'clock, just
it's a big
one
commitment.
episode.
It's a big commitment to watch another episode.
Just
now that they're a little bit longer in season 2, I don't like season 2 as much as season 1.
Just
There's
finish
a lot
Ted
going
Lasso,
on there.
or don't reference it.
Yeah, well, I know that reference, and I saw that episode, so
that's a great
felt
reference,
good about
by
myself.
the way.
Yeah.
Think like a goldfish.
Yeah, that's a good words to live by. You learn a lot by watching that show about life.
That's why you should finish it.
Yeah, maybe I need to learn more about life. Okay,
you do.
I'm humbled.
Anyway,
Anyway,
that's all the time. That's all we got. You got anything else?
No, I'm good for the
Cool.
day. Let's all wish Travis some luck here. Going to run the Boston Marathon.
Monday.
Congratulations on the $20,000+ you raised for Teddy's team and such a great cause and everything like that. And you and Caroline, your wife, running that. So pay attention. Go watch, track them, whatever you got to do Monday on Marathon Day here in Boston. So go get them, Travis. Great job. The fundraising, just incredible. That's a ton of money to raise. You put a lot of work not only into the running, but the fundraising too. That's a whole other piece of it. And great job.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to anybody who's supported our cause. You've gotten a lot of donations from all over the place. And for everybody who has helped out, thank you. If you want to help out, there's still time. My fundraising page is up on my Twitter account, my Instagram page. So please help out if you can. And next time we'll be doing a show. Hopefully, cross my fingers, I will have finished the marathon.
You got a time? Got a goal?
Caroline and I are running together. We're hoping that we can beat. We're hoping we can beat 4 hours.
That's good. That's reasonable. It's very impressive too. I mean,
it'd be very
first time marathon. That's amazing.
So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Good stuff. Well, Travis will be back here Tuesday, as will I. We'll react to everything that happens, and we'll see you all then. Thanks for watching.